My guess is you are ready to dive into Premiere Pro, and that's just what we're going to do in this lesson. We're going to start a new project, and then from within Premiere Pro, we are going to open a project. So to do that, let's start off by just double-clicking this icon to open up Premiere Pro, or however else you start up Premiere Pro. Get that splash screen. And then we get this Welcome to Adobe Premiere Pro dialog box. Now it has recent projects here. You probably won't have recent projects unless you've been kind of noodling around with Premiere Pro. What we're interested here is in the New Project button, and we're going to deal with opening projects later from within Premiere Pro. So click on New Project. And then you get this New Project dialog box. And your main function here is to give your project a location and a name. So let's click on Browse. That suggests that you put this inside the My Exercise Files folder that you created for this tutorial. So I'm going to go to Desktop, My Premiere Pro Exercise Files, and select that folder. That's all you're doing at this point. And now I want to give it a name. So you can call this one whatever you like. I'll call it New Project. Normally I would just click OK at this point, but I want to talk about these two tabs here in the New Project dialog box. The General tab has these 4 items. Video rendering and playback is the first one. And this will show up with 2 options if you have a GPU acceleration hardware that's accepted or certified by Adobe. In this case, I do, so it automatically says, yes, let's use that, and there's really no reason not to use it. If you don't have one, then you don't have an option here. You just have to accept software only. As far as the display format, for video, you typically want to use timecode, but sometimes you might want to use feet in frames if you've been working with film, for example, that's been transferred to video. And then audio display, typically you work with samples, but you can also work with milliseconds at time instead of samples. Usually you choose samples because this lets you actually edit one sample at a time if you want to. Very precise editing. Then the capture format is for if you're going to capture video from tape and you want to capture either DV or HDV. In any event, you can change this later if you want. The scratch disk side of things used to receive lots of attention, but it's really not all that important anymore. Your goal basically is to take video previews and audio previews and put them on some other drive than the drive that has all your assets. At least that's the thinking, because as you play audio previews or video previews, then you don't want to have them kind of bumping up against your assets. But the thing is, you typically don't play previews the same time you play your assets. And you only play previews if your system really isn't capable of playing video right off the timeline directly from the assets on the hard drive. But in any event, feel free to put these on some other hard drive besides the one with your assets. But in my case, I'm going to use the defaults and have them go right to the same hard drive where my assets are stored. It really won't be a problem in this case. And now I click OK. Then I get this monstrous looking New Sequence dialog box. It is a little daunting when you see all those possibilities. And basically, you can just skip this. There really is no reason for you to select a setting for a sequence. The sequence is the place where your clips will reside inside the timeline panel. And you don't have to set that now. You can set that later after you import your assets. So just cancel out of this. And that opens up Premiere Pro. There we are. To an empty project. There are no assets inside the project panel. What this also does is it creates a separate folder inside the place where you locate the project file. Let me show you that. So you notice my Premiere Pro Exercise folder's got something in it now. And there is the new project we just made. And then there's a folder called Adobe Premiere Pro Preview Files. This is where those preview files will be stored, but you notice there's nothing there yet because we haven't actually previewed anything. And typically there's nothing in there ever because I usually don't render out little previews because my system is fast enough to be able to handle all this stuff without having to create preview files. Later on, Premiere Pro will create another folder here that will be auto saves. Premiere Pro automatically saves your project every few minutes, which is a good thing. Once it starts doing that, it creates a folder in which to put those auto saves. And they're basically just project files just like this, but they're inside a separate folder. And just as a reminder, your project file does not contain your assets. It just contains links or references to your assets. That's the great thing about using this nonlinear editor. It's just a reference-based editor. It does not move your assets around. So let's go back to Premiere Pro for a moment. I mentioned skipping the creation of the sequence process when you make a new project. Let me show you why it's okay to do that. I'm going to bring in a couple of assets here. Let's say bring in these first 3 clips. I'm going to import them in. Once I have these clips here, I need to put them on a sequence. And it's so easy to take a clip from this group or any number of clips and drag it down to this new item icon here, this little folder, and click that. And it creates a new sequence automatically, puts that clip on the sequence, and makes the sequence have the attributes of the clip that I dragged to this little folder down here. So I right-click on this to show the properties of it. I'll say the sequence settings. And this looks like the dialog box we saw at the beginning. These are all the characteristics of that sequence now. And it basically matches the characteristics of the clip that I dragged to it. Now it says RE Cinema, which is not really true. It's not an RE Cinema clip here, but it has all the characteristics of an RE Cinema clip in that it's 30 frames per second, 2997, 1920 by 1080, full HD, it's square pixels, it's progressive, it's 48,000 hertz for the audio. All these things are accurate. These things are so easy now to set without having to do it manually or select a preset. I can just drag a file to that new item icon and have the sequence settings set that way. It's a much easier way to do things. That's why you can skip that thing. Now we have this one sequence inside this project. You can have as many sequences as you want inside a project, and the sequences don't have to be in any way related. You could have a sequence about a board meeting and a sequence about your kid's soccer game. Anything like that can be inside a single project. Just to be clear, you can have multiple sequences residing inside a project. But at some point, you might want to open up another project, and it's fairly simple to do that. You just go to File, Open Project. There you go. And then you can track down a project. Now, in this case, I do have a project inside the Working Files folder. I'll go down here to Working Files. Here's projects, and here's the project that will open up next in the 0303 tutorial on preferences. I click on that, click Open, and it says, do you want to save this thing you've been working on here? I'll say, oh, sure, I'll save it. What the heck? We're saving it to that exercise files folder anyways. So that opens up this new project, which happens to be empty. We're not going to be worrying about assets in the next lesson. But in any event, that's how you open up an existing project. And if you want to start a new project from within Premiere Pro, you go File, New Project. There you get that same new project dialog box, and you start the process all over again. So that's how you start a project from scratch, or from within Premiere Pro, how you start a new project or open an existing project.